Okay, hello everybody. Caresoft would like to welcome you to our SailPoint webinar, Integration with ITSM Solutions. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. We hope you'll ask questions using the Q&A pod at the bottom of your screen, and we're going to do our best to answer all of your questions at the end of today's webinar. But if for some reason we do not get to your question today, the SailPoint team here at Caresoft will follow up with you after the presentation. Caresoft Technology is a trusted government IT solutions provider delivering software and support solutions to federal, state, and local agencies. Caresoft maintains dedicated teams to support sales and marketing for all of its vendors, including SailPoint. Our contact information will be displayed at the end of the presentation, and a copy of the webinar will be emailed to you. At this time, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today, Matt Topper, President and Solutions Catalyst at UberEther, and Justin Sherman, Solutions Catalyst at UberEther. Guys, the floor is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Did we want to share the screen from our side this time, or there we go. Perfect. So today's webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about ITSM solutions. So over the last, I would call it 5-10 years, we've seen a lot more integration between the identity and access management capabilities and ITSM. So these are your ServiceNows of the world that are traditionally limited to your help desk services. So if we want to go ahead to the next slide, I don't think there's a way for me to push forward. Oh, there we go. I lied. I can do it. So what we've seen is, right, it's no longer just focusing on your operations and inbound calls and ticketing systems. It's really becoming a workflow integration, migration, application platform that organizations are using to build more and more processes around and approvals around. And also with that comes a significant amount of audit tracking. So today we'll dig into a little bit about how SailPoint manages the onboarding of users and then interfaces with ITSM solutions, either allowing tickets to automatically go outbound if you have to do hardware fulfillment as a new employee or contractors coming on board, alert the hardware teams of a person's start date, when their laptop is, alert the facilities teams to assign them a desk, track those tickets, bring them back in, see when they're closed, so then we can continue to the next step in the process of provisioning the person's account. So when they show up on the first day, they're ready to roll. And then additionally, using that to start tracking access requests. A lot of times people will come in and say, want to use one single interface for all of this, and then keep the audit of those records of who did it when back in the governance system. So in the past, it's been a lot of me talking, and I have a true expert on my team in this technology that's been implementing it for, I think he's lying, probably closer to 10 years now, in Justin Sherman. So we're going to turn over to Justin and let him walk through ITSM and SailPoint with everybody. Justin?
All right. Thanks a lot, Matt. I'm just going to assume everybody can hear me and just plow through this.
All good.
So let me go back. So anyways, today, our presentation in a nutshell here is we're just going to give a very brief overview of what ITSM is and what an ITSM tool does. We'll talk about the benefits of integrating your ITSM tool. And I think today we're just going to specifically focus on ServiceNow. So we're going to talk about the benefits of integrating ServiceNow with SailPoint. We'll talk about what pieces of functionality are involved in the integrations and how do they work, and kind of dive a little bit into some of the technical details, but not too much into the weeds. And then lastly, we'll just go over some scenarios that if they exist on your team or your organization, if they're relevant to you, then might indicate that these integrations would be beneficial to you. So what is ITSM? IT service management. So, very brief, high level, it's the delivery of IT as a service, right? So focusing on customer needs and IT services for customers, ultimately, aligning with the broader objectives of the business and kind of supporting the overall mission, right? So ITSM tools, typically built around one of the standardized service management frameworks So for example, ServiceNow is built around the ITIL framework, and these frameworks just provide collective processes and best practices, needed to manage and support IT services. And one of the fundamental components of ITIL is the configuration management database, right? Which if you've ever interacted with ServiceNow, or from a customer standpoint or a configuration standpoint, that's a huge part of the tool. So anyways, what we have here on the screen is just a very high level basic example of how one might interact with a ITSM tool like ServiceNow. So it typically starts out with some type of service needed. It could be a laptop, or in this instance, somebody needs a new security badge. So instead of knocking on people's doors and email and Jerry from IT figuring out who they need to talk to get a security badge, they know that they can go into the ITSM tool like ServiceNow to find this asset and request it, right? So they'll go into the tool and they'll submit a request, and this opens up a trackable, auditable request in the tool. And most ITSM tools, especially ServiceNow, come with a pretty robust workflow engine, so you can assign processes around how to handle this request for this particular asset, and any approvals that might need to be tacked on, right? So that request is processed in that manner, gets put into some team's queue to complete. The team will take that request, they'll complete it, they'll deliver that security badge, and when that request is completed, the customer is notified, and that request is stored and able to be audited to make sure that it followed the correct policies and compliance regulations. So pretty high level overview, very brief. But next slide here. There we go. All right. So now, why do we want to integrate this with SailPoint? So I don't want to assume everybody on the call are experts in ServiceNow and SailPoint. So just a very brief overview of what SailPoint does. So SailPoint offers the industry-leading platform for identity governance and administration. It enables organizations to govern their identities and access by aggregating all of that information in from various systems, whether through connectors or through data dumps, and allowing organizations to view that data, certify access, who has access to what, automate certain HR processes like onboarding and offboarding, all while keeping everything in compliance and auditable. So, essentially taking some workload off of IT and quickly enabling business users to get the access that they need to do their jobs. And then just another quick note, the two major products or platforms within SailPoint is you have your on-prem product, your on-premise product, which is Identity IQ, and then there's SaaS-based product, which is Identity Now. And just pointing that out because a couple slides into here, there's some slight differences in the integration, so we'll cover that. All right, so anyways, why integrate these two? So we see here that the main benefits here. So, gaining visibility into all ServiceNow accounts and groups. So just like any other application or system in your organization, ServiceNow has accounts and access that need to be governed as well, right? I'm sure you don't want to be dinged by audit for not knowing who has access to what in ServiceNow and having disabled accounts here and there. So the SailPoint offers an enterprise-grade connector for ServiceNow that enables you to do just that, which is govern your ServiceNow users. So, like I said, gain visibility in all users, certify who has access to what, and utilize that connector to automate HR processes like creating accounts, adding or removing access, and even enabling and disabling the accounts as well. And with that visibility comes a huge benefit cost-wise, right? Because you're paying for users in ServiceNow, and if you're able to see which ones are orphaned or disabled or just not being used, you're able to clean that up and save money. So that's a huge benefit already. Next, we have automating ticket creation. This is more for turning manual work items from SailPoint into ServiceNow requests. So Matt kind of touched on this earlier. Being able to two things, right? So being able to take equipment requests as well, and create tickets for that during the onboarding or offboarding process from SailPoint is huge, as well as being able to manage your disconnected applications from SailPoint. As opposed to handling it in SailPoint, you're able to kind of add visibility to those requests and add some workflows to those in service. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about how that works in depth in a couple upcoming slides, but it's a huge benefit to be able to, kind of offload that manual work item functionality from SailPoint to ServiceNow and utilize the ticketing system and visibility there. So self-service access requests. So this is kind of like porting the access request functionality from SailPoint into ServiceNow, right? So ServiceNow is going to load all of the requestable access that would be available in SailPoint, and just like any other asset that's normally available for request in ServiceNow, it'll display it there. So you're able to request access and other IT services all in one place, kind of keeping that familiar UI that users are used to requesting things in. And then another benefit, which we'll kind of go deeper into as well, but just being able to keep the approvals as well for access requests in ServiceNow kind of gives you some added flexibility if maybe something custom logic wise in the approval workflow that you wanted to do, but maybe SailPoint doesn't support. So another huge benefit there. And then lastly, just keeping the ServiceNow processes and approval and audit with the governance power of SailPoint. So a little bit of a theme I've been mentioning is that kind of single pane of glass, right? So keeping that unified UI experience of folks requesting things in ServiceNow and completing requests in ServiceNow as opposed to having two systems, and then SailPoint handles the governance and the provisioning engine of the access requests, et cetera. So it's better to have one system to track these requests and fulfill these, and having to go into two systems to do different functions. So we'll go into the different integration types. So the actual ServiceNow connector, the service desk integration, which is the automatic ticket creation, and the catalog integration, which is your access request through ServiceNow. So SailPoint has several awesome enterprise grade connectors for various popular systems. So obviously one of those is ServiceNow. And the connector is technically considered part of the integration, but it's just like any other connector. I believe that's included with the base product. So this connector, many functions. Obviously, the main one is it's going to aggregate in all the ServiceNow users and entitlements, allowing you to see who has access to what and provide detailed entitlement information. Also gives you the ability to kind of build up an entitlement catalog or add any user-friendly descriptions or information to these entitlements that might already not be in ServiceNow. So kind of helping with the access review process or access request process, that folks are able to see these user-friendly descriptions while doing those functions. Also, assisting with onboarding, offboarding. So being able to automate, account creation for ServiceNow, adding and removing access. So when you're certifying access and you revoke access because it's a direct connector, it'll go ahead and just use the connector to remove that access. And same thing for when you request access. And then, folks leave or offboarding or suspended, you can disable and re-enable. And like we talked about earlier, just being able to see the accounts that you have and clean up the ones that you aren't using is benefit enough, right? And then just keeping audit happy with seeing who has access to what and doing those certifications. So next up, the service desk integration. So the idea of this integration is to a couple ideas. So number one is enable provisioning for applications that are technically unreachable by SailPoint, right? So what does that mean? You might have a legacy application that SailPoint doesn't have an enterprise grade connector for, or it can't be reached using one of the generic connectors like a JDBC or a web services. So it's, typically you get that data into SailPoint by doing like a data dump or some kind of flat file upload. So what happens when a provisioning event is triggered for these disconnected applications in SailPoint is that a manual work item gets created containing all the provisioning information in there. So provisioning events could be triggered by a lifecycle event, so someone joining and needing an account created, or access requests needing granting access or revoking access, anything that could trigger a provisioning action in SailPoint. So these disconnected applications would have manual work items created. Now, what you don't want to happen in SailPoint is kind of have the work item bloat and the rigmarole of having people deal with these manual work items through SailPoint. So when you're connected to ServiceNow through the service desk integration, those manual work items are automatically created in ServiceNow as requests, right? And once they're in ServiceNow, you can apply your workflows or anything how you want that request to be routed. So it'll contain all the relevant information as well, like the identity information, what the action is, disable, enable, add, remove access, and what application it's for. So whoever owns the request or whoever's queue gets put in, they'll complete the request in ServiceNow. They'll go to the application or assign it to the app owner, and they'll add or remove the access, and then SailPoint actually polls ServiceNow to see what the status is of these tickets that it creates in ServiceNow, and will update itself accordingly, right? So we'll get into this a little bit later, but you're essentially mapping statuses of ServiceNow tickets to statuses of provisioning items in SailPoint, so it knows how to map those and properly close them out. So it's good to have the visibility and auditability of having these requests in ServiceNow as opposed to just in SailPoint, because obviously ServiceNow is very useful for handling these types of requests. Slide here. So service catalog integration. So this is essentially your access requests in ServiceNow. So the idea here is the integration starts in ServiceNow, where it's going to load and display any requestable access from SailPoint, and then you can configure it to go through the approvals, any workflows on the ServiceNow side. And once that's complete, or the approvals completed and it's ready to actually be provisioned, it gets sent to SailPoint, where the provisioning engine actually goes ahead and takes care of that provisioning item. So you'll notice, and we'll kind of get into this a little bit hopefully later, but there's if you look in ServiceNow, there's two separate applications for this integration. There's one for the SaaS product for Identity Now, and the on-prem product for Identity IQ. Just one, the way they work internally is a little different from each other's, hence the two applications. One difference also between them is Identity IQ will actually also offer in this integration separation of duty policy. So while you're requesting in ServiceNow, it'll actually tell you in ServiceNow if whatever you're requesting is going to cause a policy violation, and kind of give you some options on how you want to handle that. So that's an awesome benefit. It also allows for options for sunsetting and sunrising these requests for Identity IQ. Those features aren't in Identity Now yet, and Identity Now will allow you to request access profiles and roles, as opposed to every piece of access. But the main, one of the great things about pushing the actual front end for access requests from SailPoint to ServiceNow is, one, obviously keeping that single pane of glass, but two, being able to keep the approvals in ServiceNow and configure those in ServiceNow gives you just a little bit more flexibility, especially if you're using Identity Now. It makes it so much better. So so take a little closer look at some of the details here. So in ServiceNow, how are these integrations available? So it used to be you would have to get an update set to install in ServiceNow from SailPoint's Compass site, which is their community site. And it used to drive some ServiceNow admins nuts thinking, who developed this update said, who reviewed it. I'm supposed to put this in my production environment, right? But now all the integrations are available in the ServiceNow store, and they're all ServiceNow approved applications. So you don't have to worry about who reviewed it. And there's screenshots and tutorials on the marketplace site too. So that's very nice. Some specifics about the service desk integration. So in more recent versions of the on-prem product, Identity IQ is a newer connector-based integration module for this. So like any other XML-based application, you're configuring the connection info when mapping the ServiceNow statuses to SailPoint provisioning statuses, etc. In Identity Now, it's all done through the REST API to set up this integration. So there's a REST API for creating the integration, and APIs for listing and updating. So anytime you want to see what the integration looks like, you list it through the API, and anytime you want to update it, you're doing that through the API as well. And when you create it through the API, it does kind of all of the internal setup for you within the SaaS product. So that's nice. For the service catalog integration in Identity IQ, there's a set of configurations and workflow files that you can use from Compass to basically get the workflows in the on-prem product updated to be able to handle the service requests. The access requests from ServiceNow. And then on the Identity Now side, most of the setup is going to be on the ServiceNow side, just being able to connect to the REST APIs from Identity Now, and it's just going to utilize those REST APIs to load in the access requests and all the workflows are kind of managed internally within the SaaS platform, so you don't have to worry about updating any of those. And then tracking the open requests. So SailPoint, like I said, will pull ServiceNow at a configurable time that you set to kind of check on these requests and update itself accordingly. For the service desk, for example, if it sees a request is closed complete and it's a disconnected application, SailPoint's going to optimistically provision that or deprovision that access. But then the next time that the data is aggregated in from that system, then it'll be able to know truly if it was closed or not. So if there's a ticket that it said was closed and it was for removing access, and the next time you aggregate in from that application into SailPoint and see that access is there, SailPoint will display that, so you know that you have to look at that and kind of take care of that. So some signs that you might want to integrate your ITSM tool or ServiceNow specifically with SailPoint. Another benefit here too on the left, if you have sensitive applications that maybe SailPoint does have an enterprise grade connector for, but you're just not comfortable with the automated provisioning, or you need kind of an extra layer of compliance there, you can hook that application up to the service desk integration and allow provisioning events for those sensitive applications to go through ServiceNow, and add any extra workflows on the ServiceNow side around that. If you have tons and tons and tons of disconnected applications, which a lot of folks do with these legacy applications and kind of custom applications, and you're stuck in manual work item hell in SailPoint, porting these off to ServiceNow would be a good idea for that extra level of visibility and tracking and management. And then at the top, if you want to govern your ServiceNow accounts and access, right? Maybe audits dinging you because you didn't know who had this important piece of access, and like we said, maybe your budget's being eaten up by too many users, and you're trying to figure out what users do I really have, what's being used, can I clean this up? And then you want your access and equipment requests to be grouped together. So whether that's you want folks to be able to self-service access requests in ServiceNow, or you want to lump together in your onboarding process from SailPoint, kicking off automated tickets to ServiceNow for things like laptops and physical items, along with the automatic access provisioning this would be an awesome integration point. And then, like I said, keeping with the single pane of glass kind of approach, keeping requests being completed and access requests in ServiceNow, kind of keeping that familiar UI instead of having two systems for that. So, and that is trying to keep it under 30 minutes so we can leave some time for questions. So that's all I have to say about that.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. So we did have a couple questions come in. Let me grab them real quick while we got about 5 minutes left here. If anyone's got any questions, please feel free to shout them out in the chat. Let me grab that question real quick. All right, so Justin, so how does the ServiceNow connector make it easy to see orphaned accounts, and how can I tell?
Yeah, so in both, kind of talking about both the SailPoint product, right, the on-prem and the cloud or the SaaS-based product. So the idea is you have your identities, right, that come in from HR, and you want to correlate these downstream accounts to that identity, right? So right off the bat, you aggregate in the users from ServiceNow, and there's some correlation logic that takes place in SailPoint, right? Linking that account to the identity based on something like an employee ID or an email, right? So right off the bat there, in both products, you can get a report on uncorrelated, an identity now they call them uncorrelated accounts. For an identity IQ, they call them uncorrelated identities. But right there, you can see, if something isn't correlated to an identity, that it at least gives you an opportunity to investigate, right? So is this someone who isn't here anymore, right? Is that why it's not correlating, or is this some kind of service account or something like that? At least gives you the opportunity to print out a report and take some action. But the main thing is you want to see what's correlated and what's not. That's definitely a dead giveaway. So gives you the opportunity to clean that up and get rid of users that aren't being used and saving some money there.
So I know what my answer would be, and I'm just going to throw an audible with a follow-up question. When you've done implementations with customers, like how many orphan accounts do you normally see when you do an integration to something big like a ServiceNow? Is it singles, dozens, hundreds, percentage-wise?
It's usually exactly one account. No, I'm kidding.
Yours?
Yeah. No, it's funny. It's funny when you get the initial kind of report on that, and you hear the shock in people's voice. So the shock would indicate it's pretty high numbers, and it's accounts that, oh, we set up for this one task just to see what would happen, and it's a throwaway account, except we forgot to throw it away, right? So you see lots of things like that.
Yeah, I will say in government agencies, we've typically seen somewhere between 10 and 20% of the accounts in a ServiceNow be orphaned or should be inactive, but they're still active, which, as you said earlier, right, that comes to a very quick cost savings for many customers, and in some ways pays for a chunk of the identity and access management implementation you're doing. So I guess one last question here before we hit the 1:30 mark. Can you customize what information or text is sent when SailPoint creates the ServiceNow requests?
Yeah. So the two different products, you're able to accomplish it in two different ways, but kind of the same end game. So, but I'll keep with the commonality of it. So you can customize what's sent, and what's sent on the other side of the integration is it's not incident tickets, it's requests with request items and tasks within those request items, right? But yeah, you can customize it in the integration module, or in Identity Now, the integration application XML, and it's typically done using the velocity template framework. So you can, the system itself will send you some information, and you can pick and choose and kind of put some static text in there and inject identity information of what's coming in through that provisioning plan, right? Because you basically have your provisioning plan to use to get information out of, and that provisioning plan is what's being converted into that service desk request. So yeah, you do have the option. One thing, and I know we're running out of time, but one thing that does, one gotcha that I've noticed is while you can customize what goes over into the request, is you want to try to avoid putting business logic in that velocity kind of section where you're customizing that request. You want to kind of try to avoid using all the ifs and elses in there, and just focus on the actual information, and maybe keep the business logic in rules, or maybe even on the ServiceNow side. So
awesome. That's a really good tip for people who haven't done it before, because I know some of the pain you can get into. So with that, we'll turn it back to the SailPoint or the Caresoft team. Sorry.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Matt and Justin, for presenting, and thank you to all of our attendees for being here with us today. We hope the information you received during this webinar has been helpful for both you and your organization. As a reminder, everybody will be receiving a recording of the presentation in a follow-up email. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to call or email us. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your day.